Hi folks, I'm Sean from Fidelity Factory, and I've created this video to help document some tips and tricks around taking ownership of an app that is new to you. As someone who works in Power Apps, you may have found yourself working in an app that someone has shared with you, so you're a co-owner, or maybe it's an app that a third party built and has provided your organization with. And you need to get into working with it, becoming someone who can continue to sustain the app, maybe add some new features or adjust it onwards. So we're gonna cover some important tips and tricks around this concept of stepping in and becoming effective in an app that you didn't create. So we're going to start off with talking about how you can get to know an app that you didn't create. Going forward, how you can build apps that are easy for other folks to step into. And then finally, the sustainment and administration of apps with the idea of being someone who's taking apps that are provided to them or sharing apps out. So with that, let's get started. As you can see, we're over here in the Makers portal, and we're going to start out with our Live Atlas app. And this is an app that we've created kind of for the purposes of demonstrating some things. And we're gonna take this as an example of an app that is new to us. So let's go through the process of figuring out how we can get to know the app better. So that's our first step, is really getting to know the app. And I think most importantly, in the process of taking on a new app that's been provided to you, is just getting started with it and getting your hands on it, trying some things with it. So let's have a look at our Live Atlas app. So we're going to do a little bit of a search here, and we'll see that we have this searchable list of cities in our Live Atlas app. So let's perform a search. We're looking for Vancouver, and let's see what happens. So we clicked on Vancouver in that gallery, and we can see that the rest of the interface responded. And it looks like automatically the name changed to show some details about the population, what the temperature is, which is kind of neat. And then it looks like we have a map link that's available. This is a gallery control I can see with pictures in it. If we click on the pictures, we can see the text is responding above it. That's nice. This is a scrollable gallery, pretty cool. And then we've got some news that's being featured below. So that's good, and we'll go on to click on that view map. And here we have a map of the actual city as well. So that's a nice feature, and we click on the map and it brings us back to the main screen. So first and foremost, get to know the screens and the flow of the app so you can figure out how a user is going to be interacting with it. So that's one of the best ways to get acquainted, is just to get started using it. That isn't always possible depending on whether you're writing data, but do your best to get to know the app. One of the next things to do with your app is to have a look at the connectors. You want to see which data sources your app is connecting to. In this case, we're connecting to a number of the Bing services. We're connecting to SharePoint, and then we actually have a custom connection. So we see the data sources that are part of the app, which is great. Moving along, we want to do a audit. So we want to figure out what's happening with everything in the app, and if there's some script that's been written or some expressions that's been written, let's figure out what those are. Clicking on the app node and then going to the app on start is going to reveal to us if there's any scripts that have been applied in that case. Maybe there's a confirm exit or some other types of scripts that have been added there, but it's a good place to start. We can go through the screens as well. This property selector is very useful. So if we go into our gallery and choose it, and click on the drop down list, we can actually see some more about some of the items in the gallery that have values in them. Some of the properties, I should say, they're all highlighted or bolded in that property selector. That's another really good way of seeing where things have been changed aside from the default properties that are assigned to these controls that you're working with. So make sure that you're familiar with the script that's in the app, familiarize yourself with it. Going over to the View tab, we're going to check out a few other things. So we've seen the data sources. If media has been added, we're going to be able to see all of that here. If variables have been created, we click on the View Variables, and it brings us into this view of the variables, which is great. We can see what the variables have been named. You'll notice that we have a notation happening here for the naming of variables. We prefix them with var in this case, which is nice. So we can go in and look at these. We can see the values by clicking on this little grid. So we can see it's a table. There's the actual values that are within the table. So that's a great way for us to get acquainted with the variables and what they're being used to store. We can also see where they're being used, where they're being defined and used throughout the app. So those are the controls that reference the variables. So that's another good way of familiarizing yourself. Check out the variables. The collections offer the same kind of feature. We don't have any in this case, but it gives you a view of where the collections are within your app. As you're getting started with the app, another thing to think about doing is you can perform a save as. If you want to create kind of a dev version of the app, you can do that by doing a save as. That's going to be helpful to you if you want to start trying some things within the app yourself without changing the build that is currently live. So that's a little bit about getting to know the app. The next main step we're going to talk about is a few quick tips on building Power Apps that are sustainable and easy to use for other people. So really quickly on this one, one of the most important things is as we're all writing expressions in Power Apps, make them nice and readable. So we'll go through and have a look at this. We can see that we have a simple expression here. But if we look at a more complex expression, perhaps like the onSelect, you may find yourself looking at cases such as this, where you have a more complex expression or set of expressions. Being able to write some comments in there is really good. So in this case, all you need to do is put in those forward slashes, and then you can write a comment about what's happening. So this is a really good way of separating the logic in your expressions. In this case, we're connecting to a bunch of connectors out there. So we've got the MSN Weather, Bing Image Search, Bing Maps, etc. And by commenting them, it's easy for someone to come in and have a look at what's happening in the app. It gives them a good idea about what's happening in the expression. And you can also separate out the logic a little bit this way too. So it's a really good way of keeping things organized for someone else that's coming in. Another really important part of building an effective app that's sustainable and supportable by other people is how you name things. So we have these screens. You can see that we've used a naming convention on screens. Prefix the controls that you have out there in your app in a way like this. There's different casing options. We're going to provide a link to a white paper that's really useful and has some good tips for building sustainable apps and some best practices around that. And the same goes for variables. So we have some variables here, and we're prefixing the variables with var. So in your expressions, do your best to follow some conventions around how you name things. So we've covered a few really good tips, I think, around getting to know an app and to make apps easy for other people to take over. And let's cover just a few other points around the sustainment administration of apps. So something that is really great that the product team has done, I think, is being able to import an app. So exporting and importing apps is something you're going to have to get familiar with, especially if you have environments. We recommend that organizations create a proper test and prod environment, as well as the default environment for people to begin working within. But as apps become an enterprise-grade app, you need to have some strong processes around these. So think about creating environments. You can import and export apps one by one, or use a solution to package up apps and entities that may be part of a solution together to have a more complete migration path. But really think about the importing and exporting and how that will come into the support and use of the apps out there. If we have a solution or an app, I guess, that we want to share with someone, all we have to do is click on the ellipsis. So sharing apps is an important part of the administration of apps. So if you find yourself needing to do that, it's very easy to share apps. It's almost like sharing a document in Word when you get into document, I should say, in SharePoint. It's a very simple process to share an app. Another really nice thing that I'll go to on the details tab for an app is version history. So versions of your apps are stored automatically after you do the initial save. Remember to do that initial save, and those versions are going to be kept automatically for you going forward. Another really nice thing, if you need to roll back as an app owner or an administrator, you've got the ability to do that. Finally, going back to our Live Atlas app, one thing that's important to mention along that whole concept of managing the release of apps as you build features in them, the process is that as you save an app, it's gonna save that app, and anyone accessing the app that accesses and runs it from the mobile device or from the portal just by clicking on the link and opening it, they're going to see the last published version. So if you go in and make some enhancements and save again, those aren't going to be available to the people that are running the app from the main screen immediately. Only when you publish an app will the folks that are consuming the app going to be able to access those features that you've added. With that, I think that we've covered a lot here today, but now I think we've shared some ideas. Hopefully you found it useful, getting to know an app, building sustainable apps, and some of those tips around sustaining and administering apps as they come to you have all been covered. So we hope you found this useful, and good luck with your Power Apps building.